So I'm going to bring Wade back on stage, and it's you hinted about golden architecture. Now is time to really for us to understand it. And so
thank you, Sean. I'll get the clicker this time. Yep. So hopefully, the session was helpful. This is what we truly want you to kind of hear from different industries. You have a financial industry, you have a supply chain industry here, and you have healthcare, and you have logistics client. You're hearing from a wide variety of customers on how they are using the technologies and kind of how they see this growing. I'll go through the components of golden architecture. So before that, I want to talk about what is this data gateway about. At the center of it is data gateways. The core essential foundation that we are hearing from our customers is scalable and resilient architecture. You have seen from this panel that one thing they really need is making sure the system is live, up and running, because this is essential to the business. If this system stops, their business stops. That's where the resiliency is very, very important, and the scalability aspect of it. Second thing you have heard them across the board is security. It cannot be taken light. Security, because this is the way that you're getting data in and out of your systems. Security has become the core essential part of your data gateways deployments. The second thing that the customers are asking is, I don't want to invest into one technology for MFT. What we have seen is MFT is like just transferring the files. They have quite a good amount of requirements on how they want to move the files. But when they add EDI to the mix or APIs to the mix, they don't want to invest into another technology. Hey, one technology comes and says, I can handle EDI really well, and another technology comes and says, I can do a lot of data transmissions really well. Another company comes and says, I'm all about APIs, APIs, APIs. Great, but when we looked into the requirements from our customers, you need all of this. That's where you need a system that kind of can address all your requirements, whether it's MFT, EDI, XML, validations, and being able to handle APIs. And after got the data gateway in, the next big thing the customers are saying is, now I got all your gateways in, but how do I bring self-service? Companies are being challenged a lot, especially with COVID and team members unable to find resources who are talented enough to set up these partners. The companies are asked to do more with less. How can we make all of this happen without a self-service, right? So self-service, being able to reduce the cost of operations have become very, very essential for a lot of the companies. And then the key thing is command center. How do you bring governance and controls? Especially I've seen governance and control. Last 1 year, I don't know what happened within the evolution. Governance and controls have become so much critical. It's not about data transfers anymore. What we are hearing from our customers is, I want to make sure where I'm sending the data, where I'm getting the data, who has access to the data, and how do I make sure the thing that I received, I have acknowledged them in time, and how do I make sure I'm not losing any files? How do I ensure my system is up and available and it can serve the trading partners? That has become so much essential to our customers. So if I look into the golden architecture, this is all the capabilities. I need resilience, I need security, I need a diverse set of things that I can handle, MFT, EDI, XML, flat files, JSON, APIs, and I want to be able to do it through a very streamlined self-service layer, and at being able to have governance and controls across my organizations. How do we deliver it is the building blocks that you would see here. At core of it, what we have done, if you want to build a MFT setup, we'll start with MFT. We have super simplified the way you perform MFT setup. One of the key things, the power is in the simplicity. The hardest thing to do is to make complex things simple, right? So what we said is, why do I need to go through a coding process? We need to do being able to handle very large number of variations, right? A lot of teams, when I speak, who have no clue about handling EDI and MFT, they think it's very simple. Oh, you're just about file transfers. You just move the files. But this is very, very essential to the building blocks, right? Without this, the companies cannot even trade with other companies, right? But the people in this room, we know how complex it could get just moving the files. There's so many variations that you get. Hey, I want to move this file through 100 different protocols that we have. I want to send the files. You need to send the files. Or when I collect the files, I don't use this file sets. Only use this file regular expressions. When you collect this set of files, delete them. If you don't collect this set of files, don't delete them. Use PGP encryption for me. Other customer says, use RSA encryption for me. Other customer says, I'm going to send you a bulk file. You need to split it, right? And other customer says, I'm going to send you single files, and then you need to aggregate it. I could go on and on for probably an hour explaining the variations that you get. But we need to make it really simple and easy. What we have done with PEM is a two-step process. It's simple. You create a partner, you create templates. Everything has a pattern. You create a template, boom, you copy the template that you created, and your setups are done. We could challenge you if you have a template and you know the partner connectivity information, you could technically create a setup in less than a minute. And this can be super, super complex setups. That's the power of the technology we talked about. We didn't build the technology, but we made the technology, made it come and easy for you to use. The second thing is, now that I connected those gateways and I want to extend it to the EDI operations, things that I want to extend the solution to be able to add additional processes. The key thing, especially with the logistics companies and supply chain companies, even to a good extent on the healthcare side, the variations is where they kill you, right? I have one partner doing things in one way, another partner needs a minor variation, but when we go and implement it, you have to test with a very large number of trading partners. We wanted to avoid that. That's where, being able to add rules to the existing flows, being able to configure those data flows, adding translation to the data is just a click. You could just drop a new rule and a process, and you will be able to create a net new process. And being able to connect this with your backend applications, whether you're trying to connect through SAPs, Oracles, or any ERP applications, you could very easily connect it. There's a suite of adapters that IBM provides you, which you could connect this gateways to so that you can integrate a diverse set of applications. When Ali was talking about 7, and there are other customers, that's only on the supply chain. And you have financial clients and you have healthcare clients, they integrate with a diverse set of applications, and you have those capabilities to be able to make the solution extendable. And the packs, especially with the financial, supply chain, and healthcare, there's a different set of data that you move. And they need a lot of validation of data, meaning, especially in the healthcare, you get a file, you got to make sure there's a SNP level 1 to 7 validation. You need to make sure those validations are done very thoroughly. And to the nice thing, some customers want all 4 levels, some customers want 3 levels, some customers says I only do 1 level of data validation, and it could go on and on. There's customers that have variations in terms of data validation that they wanted to make it very unique for their operations. And for financial clients, it's kind of very different. They have SWIFT, ACH, and there's a different set of validation that needs to go through. For supply chain, logistics transactions, especially when we go to ship to store in terms of how data comes in, how they need to split the data, and how they get an order, they get it for every warehouse or every store, and then they have to aggregate the data based on the store and process the file. There's some very complex requirements that you could get into in handling that data. And that's where our healthcare, financial, and supply chain industry packs truly comes in to making sure we are able to address those requirements for you. And the other critical thing is API capabilities. There's many people who says, no, we have not seen API capabilities in Sterling. With Pragma and IBM, we have built API capabilities that are part and native to the product. You can create APIs, and you can create them through various, it's not just basic auth, OAuth, and token-based authentication. You could create APIs and make customers invoke those APIs. And you can also call APIs. And we have given you different ways, and there's a session Jaira will be taking, and there's also labs. It's not just saying we could do it, seeing is believing. There's also labs that you can go through where you can actually create APIs, execute the APIs, and run them within Sterling Integrator. You could perform data transformations using our technology and being able to integrate to your backend applications. As you have seen, the technology that you are seeing can address you MFT, EDI-MFT gateways, and APIs with class, addressing you a diverse set of requirements. The next thing that you would see once you're done, okay, now that we have the capabilities, we have to make it simple, not for people internal to your organization. When you talk about these gateways, the evolution is you have to bring multiple parties onto the same application timelines, which is the hardest part of it. And self-service is becoming not an add-on tool, it is becoming something essential to the organization. And we can see that, these are the early adapters, but this is evolution of this technology where self-service, I would see, if we talk 5 years from now, I would definitely think you would have built one way or other self-service that's part of your gateways. When you need data from your customers, today it's a very manual process. You got to call them, you have to email them, make sure you find their time to do the tasks that are on their plate. But that's a lot of hard work, right? And why do we need to do it? Why can't I just send them a link and have them participate in the community? That's where truly self-service comes in. I'm onboarding a new partner. I want to change some setup for the trading partner, or I want to communicate with them about a change I want to do, right? All of that, right? And certificates, like security is becoming important, and certificate management is essential to it. And you need to be able to make sure that certificates are refreshed. You have seen a lot of our companies that we work with, they have thousands of trading partners. If the certificate change for 2,000 to 3,000 customers, having to reach all those customers is a project of its own, and you have to do it every 2 to 3 years. Why do we need to spend all the time when you could just bring in a self-service tool that you could send out a link? Very simple process. I want somebody to participate in a process, whether it's an onboarding or a maintenance. I'd send them a registration link. Hey, be part of my community. Second thing I do, they come to the solution, they register into the technology, and then once they register, they go and execute what you want them to do. It's as simple as, hey, I just want to onboard the partner, just share me your connectivity detail. Don't send me over an email. This could be the simplest form. I'll give you a screen. Instead of putting things on the Excel, go ahead and put this on a screen that you can securely transmit the data. Or you could extend the technology where from the time that you want to handshake with the customer till the go live, you can build a process with self-service that can take you throughout the whole journey of your onboarding. So that's where truly the self-service truly comes in terms of the depth at which that you want to, the extensibility that you want to really do with that. And the key thing is collaboration. A task happens where a partner came in, submitted their data, and who is going next? Who is going next? Again, you need to have project managers, and especially I've seen with eligibility files and some of the key onboardings that we do, they have a lot of influx of partners. They kind of come and bang at the same time. And I've seen other customers, like logistics customers, they are always having a backlog of 100 to 200 trading partners. And how do you make sure that all these partners are going live at the same time? You need a ton of project managers managing this activity. What if you could bring in PEM that can give you the status of your onboarding and help collaborate across multiple organizations? When you're doing an onboarding, it is not just one person, one team doing it. I've gone into security, very secure deployments in the healthcare and even in the supply chain. Very recently, we went live with one of the largest manufacturing heavy equipment client. Their challenge is there are 8 different teams that comes in a single onboarding because they have the trading partners and they have the business that needs to talk about once the partner is set up, they need to come and collaborate on that. And then once that is done, it goes into the IT to do the initial setup, and then it has to go into security team to kind of approve the setup. Then it goes into LDAP team to create an account, and then they need to go and whitelist the IP address. 7 different teams just to do a very basic setup. How do you kind of, and they're doing like, 40 to 80 onboardings a month. It's a lot of onboardings, a lot of communication that needs to happen. That's where PEM really comes in with collaboration with those. And then being able to do checks and making sure that you are reporting on the things, track and being able to report on the things is very essential. That's about self-service. Security is the core of many of the files that you process. Standard gateways, they don't use a lot of the components that we are going to show you here. They just have a proxy. And some companies say, hey, I'm in cloud. Cloud is super secure. I don't need a proxy. But definitely what the world is evolving, you need a very high standard proxy system to secure your gateways. Many of us, if you see the way that you use your email, you always have a dual authentication on your email. Your passwords are so easy to hack nowadays. And what we do, we always have an OTP that is sent to you so that when somebody types in a username and password, and there's a one-time token that is sent to your phone, emails, and you key in that data so that you have two levels of security, proven that this methodology truly works for many of us. We need to bring that same level of standards into the people that are connecting to you. That's where the proxy comes in. The first level of authentication that you get here is username, password. You could be doing LDAP, token-based authentications and user-based certificates, but you really need is an additional level of security where you could be tying your username passwords to an IP address. One of our recent clients came back and said, wait, this is great, but I really want this username and password to be linked with this IP. If somebody else tries to come in with the same username and password with another IP, we want to log them. This can happen, right? So when we go into cloud, you open up, the standard thing is we open up, okay, these are my thousands of customers. You open up all the IP address. What if the hack comes in from one of that IP addresses that you have whitelisted? It's dangerous, right? The proxies that we deploy has a way that you can link an IP address and a username that is associated with it. That's the level of controls that you could put in as part of your proxy. So this way, there's nobody else who could come in from that IP with that IP address to make sure that you got that dual authentications that you truly require to be able to do that. And virus scans, very, very, very important. You don't get a virus into your network and then kind of do a scan. Now companies wanted to make sure the scans are done at a gateway level, and you're going to find a virus file. You're going to kill that virus file at the gateways, which is where security is becoming so much essential for a lot of organizations that we do. And all of this together, you need to make sure all your applications are up and running. You have seen how diverse things Sterling gateways could really bring. MFT, EDI, flat files, and then self-service, and all this like proxies. All of this truly comes with a lot of components that are running it. You truly need an engine to be able to monitor every moving part of the components that you are using here. You think you're driving a car, and you're driving a car without a dashboard. You don't know when your car is going to stop, right? You have engine oil, you have gas, you have air pressure. There's so many checks that truly goes into monitoring your technology. This is where we built in Jarvis, which is kind of monitoring every layer of Sterling applications. A lot of companies, they just kind of stop at the CPU, memory, disk utilization. That to us is very basic. I've gone into many companies where their health of the CPU, memory, network is fantastic, and they have a system down. The reason why Sterling applications may not be running is not because of the underlying components. There is a lot of other layers that stands up on top of the infrastructure, right? The queue depths, and you being able to handle additional process. Are there any steps in the process that are creating a backlog, right? There's so many parameters that could be going wrong. We've been, one of a classic example is, one of the client was having the data come in. One time they send a file, they're getting the file. Second time they're not getting the file. And everybody was scrambling, like literally it was a 4 hours, and then they called Pragma, Ved, it was we're not doing the productions, but they called us and Ved, we have a very peculiar problem. I'm losing sessions and I need somebody who could jump in and find out what is happening. Ultimately, what it was one of the network in the perimeter server system was down. So they were, when it does round robin, they were getting some files, not getting some files. It could be as simple as that, which is unnoticed, could really cause a production issue, and having to figure out where the issue is a pretty big challenging task for us, right? Being able to handle that level of controls, being able to give you that visibility is very, very essential. That's when we talk about command center, we have two aspects of command center. One is at the infrastructure level, which is what you are seeing here, making sure all my systems are healthy, all my application systems are healthy, and the services are healthy. And I've walked into many clients, they built multiple adapters for so many reasons, and they have about 20 plus adapters, and they also have schedulers that are about 2,000 schedulers for a good reasons. How do you make sure your schedulers are running? You have 2,000 of them, humanly impossible to make sure all the schedulers are running. And the data that they process during that schedulers are highly critical files. If one of the scheduler during a restart or for any reason is down, that is healthcare data. And these are eligibility files that are taking their lives, and we'll get into some of the use cases, how critical this data is. If that scheduler is stopped, there is a problem. How do you make sure at a level of, scheduler level, you got that level of visibility built in? The next thing that we have seen is, or delivering here as part of the golden architecture, is how do we track the files? A lot of you have seen many companies, you don't have a single sterling solution, right? So when you kind of acquire companies, they come to you with additional technologies on board. Though your roadmap is to consolidate them, it's a journey that you have to take to be able to consolidate all of this data into the single platform, which still gives you the best ROI. Say the migration is about a 2-year effort, but you need to get that visibility and controls right now. So what we have seen is we wanted to bring a technology that can alert you and give you that visibility across your enterprise. And when we talk about files, no longer are the files just at the gateway level that you need the tracking. You get a file from a gateway, and the file moves into an integration platform, say an MQ, and MQ is sending the file to a backend application, SAP, eligibility file, claim, RX claim, or any of the, the health financial backend application. You, us, or the team members that are handling this file, just having to know, did I receive the file, has nothing to do with the end-to-end visibility, right? When companies are coming, when they talk about end-to-end visibility, they want to make sure the file has been delivered to the backend application. It's no longer, hey, did I receive the file? I sent it to you. That's no longer the measure of successful delivery of files. Companies have evolved and said, hey, I truly need, when I say end-to-end visibility, the file actually made it to the backend, it got loaded, and this is what has been loaded. If there's any exceptions, we want to be notified about those exceptions. That is truly where we saw, the golden architecture truly shines. You go and acquire another company, you bring in the monitoring component. Within day 10, you have visibility not only to Sterling, but also to the other product that you kind of brought into the technology. As you kind of move partners, you have a clear line of sight across your file transfers that you have done. You will be able to monitor and alert in the company. The brain of this technology, started about 10 years back when, along with PCM. This was to a healthcare client. They said they've been acquiring companies like what we are doing today. They have 17 different applications they acquired, and a file could go on with more than 50 plus routes. Think of a customer called to their support organization. They called, I have a problem with this file. For them to identify who this customer is, where did they even send the file, they had to put in 17 different teams' tickets to identify where this customer is. It's a true problem that you have. And once you have identified that file, having to go through, okay, this file came in, and they created a maze of different hops that a file could go through. And it is, okay, I found the origin of the file. Okay, this setup, where did it go? And then somebody has to track, okay, did you get the file? Did you get the file? It was a nightmare to do the support of this file processing. That's truly when we said, it should not be hard. We need to be able to track files across multiple applications, multiple hops, and being able to track and give you that visibility of the files. And while there's many things that are happening, first is being able to get those files securely, and then being able to validate the file, being able to transform the file, being able to integrate this. And you could be just using one application to do all of this, but I have walked into many organizations, they have 3 to 4 different applications just doing that steps. If you could do all of those within Sterling, perfectly fine. But when you go into financial and healthcare clients, we come up with EDIFACTs, facets a lot, and being able to introduce, like, now I get the file through Sterling File Gateway. I'm going to use ITXA for validation of data, but the transformation happens in EDIFACTs, and then the data needs to be integrated into facets. This is just within the gateway itself, you have so many hops that are going through, and then I need to be able to make sure these files actually got loaded into the backend applications. So with File GPS, you now have the visibility not just within one application, but across your applications that you are using in enterprise, and being able to alert things in terms of, hey, I am expecting a file from a client, did I get the file? And every file that came into the application, you need to make sure you are delivering the file to the backend. Did I do that for every file? And a lot of companies now have SLAs, and you would see in the business benefits what you would also get out of putting this technology is in terms of how this mission critical files can be monitored and tracked, and being able to drive those SLAs for you. So ultimately what you are able to do with this technology is being able to give data governance, data lineage, being able to alert and subscribe to different conditions that you would have, and being able to give the dashboards in terms of finding anomaly detections, in terms of how the file patterns has been growing, and being able to detect and get proactive notifications to the business, right? So this is truly that the core monitoring tool that's going to help the business and IT team do their job. This all being this said, right, so we talked about many components, right? We talked about the gateways, we talked about self-service, then we talked about monitoring and all of that. The final thing you said, or the first thing that you said, is scalability. This is the heart of many organizations today. This system cannot go down, period, right? Period. How do we make sure your systems cannot go down? And even more importantly, I have a journey to go into cloud. We have IBM Cloud, we have AWS, we have Azure, you have GCP, and other public and private cloud providers. I need to make sure this system can be deployed across any different cloud providers. What you have seen are the individual components, and this is our deployment architecture of the gateways. What you see on this is 3 different data centers, running 3 different workloads, right? And what you see on the top is the SSP, that is your security layer, and there is an adapter layer next to it. This is where all the communication happens, and then where your actual file execution, data transformation happens, and there are other services that are processing the files. And what we have here at the bottom, you would be able to do a clustering through databases and file system data replication at the bottom. At the top, you have the gateway where the data is spread across the different systems. You could technically have this data center run in parallel, meaning I could have data center 1 in one region, data center 2 in another region, data center 3 in a completely a different region, where this is being load balanced. And each block that you see is the different services that are running, right? So this is the high level architecture of our containerized based deployment. And you would have seen IBM talk about containers and Red Hat OpenShift deployment. This is truly the, the golden architecture in terms of deployment. What you see on the blocks, the blue color blocks are the worker nodes. Worker nodes is just a server, and I can just tell for this worker node what workloads that I need to be able to execute on it. Let's take a couple of scenarios here. First, a load comes in and it blew out my Sterling Secure proxy. It can happen to you, right? One of the services is down. I don't need to touch a thing. The load on Sterling Secure proxy moved from worker node 1 to worker node 2 without me even be involved in that. Without this would have been a P1 ticket. You would have created a P1, middle of the night, and you would have been working on this thing. Versus here, it detected there was a failure of a Sterling Secure proxy node because there was a high volume of data that came in it, which blew out one of the nodes. It automatically replicated in data center 2 without us even knowing the heartbeat of it. Second thing we will replicate is a huge workload. A customer started saying that, at the middle of the night, they pumped a ton of data. Data comes in, and it automatically added the new additional workloads. Think of the scalability. Today, on a traditional VM-based or a system architecture, this is months of efforts. You got to provision the hardware, you have to install the software, you have to configure the software, you have to load balance it. All of that being done at a fraction of a second. Being able to understand that there's a workload and it really requires additional compute, and you got that scalability on an instantaneous way. The next thing we will replicate, we are now back to the standard architecture. Everything is working perfectly. Something went down. The whole data center went down. Think of a whole data center went down. What would happen? Today's world, it's a disaster. In containers, in a flash beat, the workloads that are running on the data center are moved into the other two data centers. You won't even know a heartbeat that it went down. Things are back, it moves the workloads back to normal. That is truly the power of containers. Availability, scalability, and making sure it can detect things that are happening on the platform, and being able to do this level of sophistication on this platform. And the core thing is you could take this architecture, deploy it in a cloud provider of your choice or on-prem based on the preference or your roadmap of your organizations. Again, it is cloud agnostic. When you hear from all the different industries, they were truly talking about the same thing. Availability, scalability, security, this and acquisitions, being able to handle those variations, going global, being able to run this on multi-data center. This is truly world-class application that can truly deliver this. This is why I call this golden architecture. It can withstand anything that you throw at it from a scalability standpoint or of any of the things that we truly discuss. All of this is great, but I truly don't measure, hey, I could bring you a fancy technology, but it truly becomes very helpful when we can articulate what is it to your business, how does it help your bottom line, right? This is great golden architecture, but how does that impact the different industries? To your surprise, this is the same industries that are on the stage, right? The very first thing with supply chain, COVID happened to us. There was a lot of supply chain disruption that happened to the world. And being able to have this golden architecture would have helped you being able to quickly onboard new suppliers, onboard new logistics companies, being able to handle the disruption COVID has caused. What if there was another disruption that comes in? You being able to be prepared to handle those disruptions and reduced cost, right? The supply chain companies are operating on a very thin margin, and being able to reduce the cost of operations is very, very critical for them. And they need visibility of what came in, what went out, what was acknowledged, what was not acknowledged. A lot of companies now started doing supplier scorecard. If you are a supplier to a large organization, they have a scorecard that builds in to kind of understand how quickly you are able to respond to a purchase orders that was sent to you. And these are very, very critical. Or if you are a company working with suppliers, they wanted to build a scorecard to make sure you are measuring your suppliers' performance and 3PL performance, right? 3PL performance in terms of how quickly they acknowledge a workload and how they send proactive acknowledgements are very critical. And logistics, this is notorious in terms of variation. They have to say yes to every company they go into because they deal with many companies, and every company that comes in sends a different set of standards, different set of requirements. They need to have a technology that can truly be able to handle those variations that customers are throwing at them, and they need to deliver it in a much, much faster speed. And that's where truly this technology helps in. And even more important is the availability of the platform defines how much revenues they make. You will be surprised. I think DSP could share some of this knowledge when they come on the stages. If they don't accept a load tender within X amount of time, that load tender goes to someone else. Think if your system was down for 2 hours, all your load tenders are gone to a second guy who's ready to accept that orders. That is how mission critical the application needs to be. And how quickly you could send 990s back and acknowledge them back is also another factor. And if you don't send a 990 back in time, there is penalties. I have seen customers be charged, hey, you haven't sent the things on time. And many companies are moving into just-in-time delivery. They need the goods exactly at the same time, right? Every company is operating at such a lean model. They don't want to build huge warehouses to get the products like a week before, 10 days before, or a month before. They just need the goods right on time, just before they can take the goods, put it into the factory, put them into the model. What if this comes early, or what it comes late? There's a problem, right? It has to come just in time. Being able to perfect that kind of delivery models in the supply chain and logistics, this is the technology helping you to make sure you get there. And in healthcare, I started my career with healthcare, and a lot of my team members does a lot of healthcare work. And there is no work when it comes into the end of the year where we need to celebrate or be with our families. There is a ton of work. This is called eligibility enrollment, right? Every company starts to do eligibility enrollments at the end of the year. They have probably 200 to 500 to maybe 1,000 of onboardings that needs to happen end of the year. And how quickly they can onboard those trading partners is very important. But once they onboard those partners on the eligibility, what happens is they don't send the files daily. They send monthly files, they send quarterly files, they send yearly files. And every customer they have different timelines to it. But if they don't get the file in time, there's a problem. How do you have, very recently we've been asked the same thing, and I was kind of jokingly said, this is why File GPS was built, is they have 3,000 trading partners, and they have sending different schedules, and they need to make sure they send a file every quarter at some period of time, like every Monday at 4 a.m. If this file did not load by Tuesday, there is a problem. This needs to be notified to their business, hey, you did not get the file. The file could have errored out in many places. Customer should have not sent the file, or the file was sent in and it was disrupted during the transmission. File could have sent and the customer should have sent a wrong file name. A lot of things could happen. Being able to proactively notify the customers about, our business users about this file did not come in. Or there are claim processing. Every claim that we send, did we get an acknowledgement? Not at a file level, but able to acknowledge and confirm at a transaction level that you got all the claims being paid. This can also apply to all the financial and the supply chain. Hey, you sent an invoice, did you get it paid? Or they sent an order, did we acknowledge or not? These are very, very critical. And to financial clients, compliance and security are essential. How are you managing those compliance and governances are very essential. How do you protect your PHI data? How do you protect your PII data? These are PCI data, right? These are highly regulated industries where between healthcare and financial, making sure you have a very good security footprint, not just to transfer the files, but to create some really big controls in terms of ensuring who has access to the data, who's seeing the data, and what has been done to that files is very important. And then most critical important thing is the self-service. A self-service, I could address it to all these industries, making sure you have a self-service addressing all of those. So This is why I say data gateways are very, very essential to make sure that this golden architecture could benefit out of, you could get benefit from this golden architecture in this various industries that you are here. And if you have any questions, please feel free to talk to us. And this is about how you could build data gateways with a golden architecture that can truly test and withstand the times.
Well, I can definitely see why you're the CTO for the company.
Thank you, Sean.
Nice job.
Thank you.
So I have some questions. In the early slides, you mentioned that a customer needs it all these capabilities. But what do you say to someone less than 1 minute, I can't afford it all? How do they get started?
The core essence of it is the gateway, right? If you see we talked about many components, and if you see it's just one pack from IBM. And IBM has made it super simplified to kind of get started on this technology, small or big. We have now a gateway pack, which you could just take that gateway pack and deploy it, and you get most of the capabilities there. So IBM has thought through it, made sure that they can start small and expand and get into the golden architecture.
Okay, so a lot of different customers here. A lot of them worked with different business partners over the years. Maybe they are using their frameworks or accelerator. You mentioned some Pragma components here. Are they not able to leverage those components?
That's a great question, Sean. So we are a technology company, and we want to work with other business partners. None of the technologies we said are locked down to Pragma. You could take these individual components and use it across any of the business partner frameworks or other things out there. So the technologies that you have seen has no limitations in terms of using other business partner solutions or services there.
So if a customer says, hey, my environment is rock solid, I haven't been down, IBM did a sizing for me, we are high availability clustered environment, plenty of PVUs or cores to the application, why would they need Jarvis?
That's more cores. I would say Jarvis is becoming a very essential part of the management of the platform, right? The key thing is the parameters that are changing in terms of how your workloads have a direct change in terms of your behavior of your system. You get a large workload, and we have seen you don't need to scale it every time. There's a lot of tunings that you could do to your application to get the best out of the technologies. Every time you see, hey, I'm reaching 90% CPU, necessarily doesn't mean you got to add additional hardware. You could just mean that you need to identify where your resource constraints are, being able to tweak it and tune it to a way that you get the best of the performance before you add additional components. That's where truly Jarvis will give you those insights to make sure you're doing the application tunings really right before you add additional infrastructure.
So last two questions. The first one is that I was kind of shocked when you were talking about certificate management and how quickly certificate has to expire in a couple of years. What's the most aggressive certificate expiration date have you seen?
What I've seen there is something that expired, but customer didn't know it was expiring.
Wow.
So customer just ignored one of the certificate that it got expired, and they just woke up and the system was down. And they could not trade with hundreds of customers that were using that certificate. This is where and it could just happen to any of the deployments. If somebody is not watching that certificates, it could really mean a big trouble to the organization. That's where self-certificate management, you have a process and controls that are set in place that can tell you when the certificate is going to expire, when you need to reach, and making your customers and also partners being accountable to change the certificates is very essential for the data gateways.
So my last question is all about file GPS. It seems like a no-brainer. Most organizations have multiple hops from maybe a communication layer to a translation layer to maybe a middleware layer to another hop after that. I guess you're the only one that I've ever heard developing a solution for it. I guess, is there a specific number of hops that you would consider file GPS?
Yeah, I would say even a single hop, I've seen the best value out of it, and most of our 50% of our customers, they have a single hop. But the challenge is not the hops, But their challenge is making sure they are tracking the files and being able to make sure it could be as simple as I need to process every file that comes in. It could be such a simple task, a trivial task, but when you're transferring a large number of files, trust me, it's a much, much challenging task. Customer sent a file with a wrong file name. They sent it into a different directory, or they just say, we sent you the file. You know, just prove it that we have not sent you the file. It says in our system that you proved the file. And being able to track the SLAs, being able to give business a tool that they could find out what is the status of the file, where is my file, even to a single hop. This has become very, very essential for organizations to leverage file GPS.
So I guess a follow-up question to that. So if a company say, I have multiple vendor hop, Clio on the communication layer, I have IBM the translation layer, I have MuleSoft in the final integration layer, I have so many different hops, I can't use file GPS.
They can use file GPS. That's where actually file GPS value truly even increases, because now you don't need to train 5 to 10 set of technology people. They could just be using file GPS at the top layer, and you could integrate the data that you get from different hops and feed the data into file GPS and have a centralized way to manage all your data gateways. And we have already integrated this with many applications that has pre-built accelerators where you could just deploy those agents and it will feed the data, and you can get the data of visibility across all the applications that you're using.
Great. Well, thank you. Nice job.
Thank you, Sean.